Hello, everybody. I'm Heather Sappenfield, and this is my Writer's Loft. And tonight, I am going to read you a story from my new collection, which releases on September 21st. It's called Lyrics for Rock Stars. And here's the cover. Love it. Jessica Bell Designs. Thank you. If you look, you'll see that the plains across the plains is a guitar, and then there's the Denver skyline, and then layers and layers of peaks, even reaching beyond. That's because, as a Colorado native, it's impossible for me to write without incorporating this place. It's in my blood. I love it. And one of the things that really comes to play in this collection is history. I'm fascinated by it. The ways that we move through it moment by moment, breath by breath, whether it's familial, cultural, environmental. Often we do this without even realizing it. And so that's one of the things that comes into play. Things that you might experience living here in Colorado where you don't even know it and you don't even realize it. And if you read the collection, you'll be like, oh, wow, I didn't know that. Okay. So anyway, tonight I'd like to read you a story called Go. It runs about 7.5 minutes. And it's about the origins of ski racing in Telluride, Colorado, in the mines of Telluride. If you enjoy it, please consider pre-ordering the collection. There's 2 links associated with this post. And I'd love it if you order through the Bookworm of Edwards. It's a time here, especially with COVID, to support your local businesses, your local bookstore, and your local artist. So, here is Go. Abel presses the 2 barrel staves beneath water with an iron bar he found next to the mine's mill. They surface, and he sees in their molded curves the swell of Tossie's breasts. Though his mother is far away, darning socks by firelight in Finland, the silver cross on her chest brandishing reflected flame, he senses her gaze and blushes. Before Abel understood that cross, he would nestle in her lap, gripping its chill metal. If he tilted it just so, he could see a reflected boy staring back. His mother would shoo him out the door, but he'd grip her apron, inhaling its scents of morning cinnamon or afternoon rye. Go ski, she'd say, her words throaty, low, not the twang he hears here. Go, she'd said, when he and Capo had rushed home, gushing with news of this mine opening in the mountains of America, a country not much older than their own 18 years, a land ripe with opportunities that would mold them into men. She turned to prepare supper's cabbage rolls, head tilted and spine stiff with listening as they breathlessly discussed how it would be like home, then glanced out the door leading to Yalas's gentle slopes. They'd earn fortunes, they insisted, and return to their mothers with riches. Yet in this unforgiving basin, clinging to these jagged peaks, Abel had hungered for home with the same intensity that he'd craved cloudberry jam. Until 3 Saturdays ago, when after the closing whistle Capo had dragged him to the town whose name, Telluride, Abel had written in his letters home, yet still could not pronounce. They squeezed into the sleigh, winter's early night settling, the signatures on the checks for their week's meager wages barely dry. Halfway down they passed an antlered elk herd, so like reindeer Abel's eyes had become wells. He turned, pressing his face against the darkness to avoid the men's heckling. They cashed their checks at the bank and ran, Abel trailing Capo to Pine Street, saying, "What's the rush?" Capo leered as he yanked Abel into the brothel. Abel did not understand his luck when Tossie took his sweaty hand, leading him away from the romping piano music and brass-railed bar and up the stairs. She was not the prettiest of them, yet he could not tear his eyes from the natural valley where her waist met her skirt, its natural sway. Such heat! He felt he'd incinerate. He trailed her into her room, a dresser, an iron bed with a painting above, hung against floral wallpaper. The fullness of his action struck him then, and he declared, "This is wrong." Her eyes slid to the corner, chin puckering, and he realized she might be even younger than he was. With an accent he knew as Irish from hearing the men at the mine, she managed to go. Bowing his head, he touched her rigid shoulder. "I'm sorry," he said, and she softened. Their kiss captured a tear on the seam of her lips. Her curves beneath his palms had been a revelation. Promises had sealed their parting. First come, first served ruled the brothels, and the next week Abel had been too late by minutes. Ascending the stairs with another, she'd paused, scanned the room, and found him. He'd shaken his head, mouthing, "No." "Tossie!" the wide madam bellowed. Her chin puckered. "Git, darlin'!" The wrinkled miner slapped her rear. Chin lifting, she turned, and the set of her spine stole Abel's breath. As she disappeared from view, the memory of her contours burned his hands. He stormed into the night, raging, and woke in his narrow bed to the Monday morning whistle blaring through the mine's boarding house. He had no memory of what had occurred, and his wages were gone. All the next week he'd see Tossie's resolved spine and the rock ringing against his pick, hear their passion and the echoes of the other miners' labored exhalations. He'd reach out to conjure the vase of her waist. "We will sled," Capo said on Saturday morning. "That is the fastest way to town." After work they heisted 2 shovels and slogged through 7 inches of fresh white, past the jeers of the men filling the sleigh, to the first long, steep slope. As they sat down in the frigid spades, a hawk skimmed low over the basin. Cast in alpenglow, this moment triggered another in Abel's memory, one similar, yet as boys, on skis. Gripping the handle of his shovel, Capo leered at him and lifted his heels, shouting, "Go!" The word froze Abel. He smelled cinnamon and rye and felt, not the shovel in his hands, but his mother's apron. Head bowing, he whispered, "I'm sorry," then lifted his heels. A crystalline cloud engulfed him. He gasped for air. They were first to the bank, first to the brothel. Abel's hand seared as Tossie took it and led him up the stairs. In bed, her hips rising to meet his, he saw his future reflected in her eyes. Bringing his mouth to the intersection of her neck and shoulder, he tasted her, felt her through his lips, how his pulse matched hers. And now, in the pre-dawn hours of this Friday, he smooths and shapes the boards one last time. Before the sun rises tomorrow, when the wood has dried, he will attach leather straps, and then, after the closing whistle, he will lace these skis to his boots and use the iron bar as a rudder. Others will no doubt mimic what he is doing. In a matter of weeks, this trip to town will have become a race. He pictures the boy he was, shushing through winters, and knows his skill will deliver him first. His reflection gazes back from the water. For several tense breaths he studies it. Then he bows his head in gratitude to his mother. I hope you enjoyed that.